If evil's real, and if God, according to the definition used by the religions themselves, is absolutely perfect, is all-powerful, all-knowing, and perfectly good, then how can one possibly get out of Mackey's argument? Well, a lot of philosophers, including me, think that a very smart contemporary philosopher, Alvin Plantinga, has given him a good answer, and it's really very clever and very fascinating. And this is an example of a defense rather than a theodicy. It's called Plantinga's free will defense. So the first premise says that omnipotence doesn't include power to bring about what is contradictory. Okay, that's not too controversial. Second, this task is contradictory, giving humans genuine free will and personally ensuring that they never do wrong. In other words, ensuring that they always freely do what's right. Third, it is consistent to suppose that God gives humans genuine free will and we never do wrong. That is, that scenario is a real possibility. It's conceivable that that should occur. But there are some possibilities such that it is inconsistent to suppose that God single-handedly brings them about. And this, in premise 3, is one of them. So, Mackey's premise 2 is false. Premise 2, just to remind you, says if a being is omnipotent and omniscient, he can bring about anything which is possible. This is saying, no, there's something possible, namely that God gives people free will and they always freely do what's right. That is possible, but it is not something which even an all-powerful being can single-handedly bring about. So Mackey's premise 2 is false. Now, also, premise 1 is not known to be true because it is possible that God thought it a worthwhile trade-off to allow evil because of the value of genuine free will. So the argument, according to Plantinga, fails to be cogent for two reasons. One reason is we don't know that premise 1 is true, but if we don't know that it's true, then we don't know that the argument is a sound argument. But independently of that, according to Plantinga, premise 2 is just false, and so then it's not cogent because it's unsound. Now, here's what's so clever and so interesting about Plantinga's free will defense, and it's really important to see that it is a defense and not a theodicy. Look at these premises. Does this argument anywhere suppose that theism is true? Does it suppose that there is a God? Not premise 1, not premise 2, not premise 3. Premise 3 is just about the consistency of two statements. And 4 doesn't presuppose monotheism either. So, without giving any explanation for why God actually allows any evil at all, this argument just says, no, you haven't shown that the existence of God and the existence of real evil are contradictory. You haven't shown that because the second premise in your argument's false. That's all. It's purely a defensive maneuver. And Plantinga is inclined to think that a believer in God doesn't really need to go beyond defense. They can show how the case for atheism fails, and maybe God is so beyond us that we can't really fathom all God's reasons or something, and maybe we can and maybe we can't give a theodicy. Or maybe we can give a theodicy but not one that's completely adequate. In any case, he thinks this is good enough. Okay, so it doesn't presuppose monotheism, and it doesn't give an explanation for why certain evils occur. It's all just conceptual. It's all to show that theism and evil are consistent with each other. Now, there's some important things to remember about this argument. Here's maybe the most important thing to see about it is this adjective genuine. Genuine free will. Well, what kind of free will is that supposed to be? Well, it turns out it's got to be libertarian freedom that he has in mind. And he agrees that compatibilist and soft determinist theories of human freedom are implausible. Remember, libertarian freedom, we looked at the agent causation version, requires that you have an absolute ability to do otherwise or to choose otherwise. And so if you have that kind of freedom, then yeah, nothing can force you to exercise it in this way and then that way. If it forces you to make a certain choice, it's taking away your power to not make that choice. And so it's taking away your freedom. So you can't be free and have somebody also control your actions if libertarianism is true. At least somebody can't completely control your actions. They might have some influence over your actions. Here's the interesting thing. If you're a soft determinist or a compatibilist, arguably you have no way out of Mackey's argument, since in a deterministic world, God could have both given us compatibilist freedom and arranged things so that no one ever freely did wrong. So God could have made us free, according to a compatibilist definition, which I won't review right now, and just by arranging the causes in the way that he wants, and of course he would know all the laws of nature, just by arranging the causes properly, he would be able to guarantee that no one ever freely does what's wrong. Now, Plantinga assumes, I think correctly, that compatibilist theories of human freedom don't work. Mackey assumed, like Hume, that libertarian theories of freedom are just incoherent. And so that's why Mackey's confident about his argument, that he's confident that the idea of libertarian freedom is nonsense and confusion. So if there is any kind of freedom, it's compatibilistic freedom. It's freedom that's compatible with the truth of determinism. If you disagree with that, then I think, and a lot of philosophers think, that Plantinga's free will defense just works. That without assuming the truth of monotheism, it just cuts the legs out from under Mackey's argument. So Mackey's argument is widely viewed as a failure. It's widely viewed as unsound, even by some atheist and agnostic philosophers, not just the monotheists. So that's interesting. It's a rare case of a convincing refutation in philosophy. Not all philosophers agree, of course, but a lot of them do. So in the next segment, we'll look at another type of response by a famous philosopher of religion, one that could be both considered a theodicy and a defense.